And you're watching Guidance TV's Islam Newsroom. We're going to take a little bit different approach to things tonight because we have a very special guest with us and we want to kind of do an interview thing. We have with us tonight Tim Howard, Salaam alaikum rahmatullah.
Alaikum assalam, Sheikh.
A former Catholic theologian from
sir.
right here, the seminary up very close to Dublin.
Pontifical College Josephinum, the only one in America.
And it's a special place too, isn't it?
It
to
is.
The Catholics.
It is a very special place because for a seminary to be pontifical, it means it's directly under the sight of the Vatican, the Pope, for those of you who don't know what that is, which means that everything that we're taught, everything that we learn, everything that we wear, everything that we do is prescribed by the Holy See himself. Currently,
Meaning the Pope.
The Pope, yeah, the Holy See. Currently, Pope Francis, everyone seems to love him.
So anything that has to, that's like a direct connect.
Yep,
there.
he is like literally, there's like a phone line between the two, kind of like the president and, I don't know, the Secretary of State, same thing, direct phone line.
The hotline.
It's a red phone, yes.
Is it?
Like the bat phone.
Yeah, but just out of curiosity,
Yes.
you mentioned Batman stuff. Do you have something that'll shine up in the sky that says Pope, please? Or
Well, we do actually. It's the Pope's. It's the papal crucifix, which is a bent piece of wood with a stick in the middle.
let
and
me ask you a question.
Yeah.
I noticed that you have no problem with humor referring to your religion or your or any of the rest of it. It's
Not at all.
Is that common amongst the priests and?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to understand when he says my religion, it's no longer my religion because I'm not a Catholic anymore, actually.
That's true. That's true.
I'm actually a Muslim, surprise, surprise. But no, it's not actually very common because there's this idea that when you become a cleric, when you become a theologian, a philosopher, somebody that holds status within the church, you somehow have to lose your personality almost. And it's really very depressing and it's harmful to a lot of guys. But I think it's important, whatever your religion is, to keep that sense of humor because you become a very approachable person and you can have a conversation.
Okay, I know, thank you.
So,
Okay,
Yep.
that's fair. That's fair. One of the things that I've found some criticism from folks when I was a Christian and as a Muslim, they say, you know, you're too funny, you're too humorous.
Yep.
We want you to be serious all the time.
Yep.
When I get serious, I get really,
Yeah.
really serious.
Yeah.
Because there are some things that are not tolerable, something that we can't really put up with. And what I was thinking that I need to have something to just back off from that a little bit so you can tell the difference of something that's really important, something
Yeah.
that's really critical, and something that's, okay, you can deal with it. It's still important, but we can have a little bit of relaxation about it.
I think it's like a scale, right? Like a sliding scale. And what I mean by that is every issue in religion is important. There's no aspect of religion that isn't important, right? But I think there are certain parts of religion that have a really high status. And when I say religion, I'm talking about all the religions, regardless of your stance on them, their beliefs themselves. You know, that some issues take more precedence or there's more weight behind them, but everything is important. And I think, like in the Catholic Church, I'll give an example. You know, in the Catholic Church, when you're quoting something that Jesus said, or when you're talking about an event that happened, or when you're maybe getting really deep into like canon law or something like scripture, you really shouldn't be joking about that. But when you're maybe telling a story to kids, when you're teaching a youth group, when you're maybe teaching, in my case, new Catholics, it's called RCIA, I think it's important to show those people that, hey, we're human, and we can have a good time with this as well, because it's important to embrace our personalities. And humor is a gift that we're given. It's important to embrace that. You can't just shelve it because some people don't like it. But I think you need to know when and when not to use it.
Talk about the situation that arose throughout the last couple decades, really, when some of the priests were accused and even found guilty of being involved with pedophilia and with homosexual acts, etc.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's actually a really important topic, and this is one of the topics, like I was talking about earlier, that you really shouldn't make light. It's not funny, and there's no humor in it. So in the Catholic Church, I think it's important to note that the demand on a Catholic priest, a cleric, a deacon is more so, and I will say this on the record, than any other religion out there. The vows that they take, what they have to do on a daily basis, what they deprive themselves of. So there's already this immense weight on them. Well, back in the 50s and 60s and a little bit in the 40s, there was this scandal that rose through the church where priests were sexually abusing children, little altar boys, little kids. Well, the Catholic Church didn't handle it so well. And that was for a multitude of reasons. One being that a lot of times it was confessed in the sacrament of confession, and because of the seal of the confessional, you're bound. It cannot be told to the authorities, and that's a Catholic belief. Obviously, it's a doctrine, but also that you protect your own. Right, and the church should not have done that. So I'm not defending the church in any manner, but the thought was we protect our own. So what they would do is they would take these priests, and one example is they would send them to Mexico. But what they would do is they wouldn't send them to a large city. They'd send them to a very small village. They'd send them, somewhere where they weren't really getting rid of the problem. They were just putting the problem out of communication, And so no, the church didn't handle it very well. And it still plagues the church to this day. If you read the news, if you watch the news, if you look at any Catholic publications or any anti-Catholic publications, really, you'll see that the church is still paying restitutions, handling it. They're still bringing up charges. And Pope Francis has done an amazing job at going after the faults and the way that the church handled it. He's really aggressively going after those that did those acts, and I think that that's important to note, that the Catholic Church is standing up and saying, we screwed up, let's fix it.
You're a fan of Pope John Paul.
I am a huge fan of Blessed Pope John Paul II. Yes.
You like him?
I do. I love him. I really do. Karol Wojtyła, actually, is his name. And born in Poland and lived during the Second World War, and his entire seminary experience was in secret. He actually went to seminary and studied during the Nazi occupation and such.
He lived in Poland while it was occupied by Nazis.
He did, and he did more than that. Like I said, he went to the seminary completely secret, but he was part of an acting group. Very few people know this, but he was part of this local group of activists. And what they did is they were an acting group. But the problem was when
you say acting,
as in show, as in plays, as in scripts.
Thespians.
Yes. And their way of kind of revolting against the Nazis, rebelling against the Nazis, was to act and to...
This sounds a lot like Sound of Music.
Yes, kind of. And specifically, what they would do is they would act out plays, they would act out scripts that were banned by the Nazi regime. And they did it in total secrecy. And the story goes that one night they were doing it in secret. It was a candlelit room, and they had to keep their voices down because there were Nazi soldiers outside. And Karol Wojtyła at the time, it wasn't Pope John Paul II, he didn't assume that name till he was elected to the papacy. He recited his lines, but he did it in full voice. And he didn't care that the Nazis were outside because he believed that God was with him. And he just went full voice, and they never heard him.
Is that true?
That's true.
Okay, so the reason I brought that up, because you mentioned that the current Pope has done a good job with the issue of the sexual abuse, etc.
Yes.
What about Pope John Paul?
So Pope John Paul II, it's kind of a complicated issue because Pope Francis has taken a hardline stance against it, right? And has reopened an old wound. Not to say that, I don't want to say that the wound ever healed, because those that were abused, that wound may never heal. So I'm not saying that the church, that I discount what they went through. But in the church's eyes, it was solved. And Pope John Paul II, along with Pope Benedict XVI, who was not Pope at the time, Ratzinger is his name, they were working on something called the New Evangelization. And that was the kind of aftermath of Vatican II. They worked together and developed this new plan for the church to go out and evangelize people, to bring them to the church. So that was a really big thing, and that's really his legacy, along with bringing down communism in Poland. There's a story that goes, they had the wall and everything, and there were the signs. And so Stalin didn't want a church to be built. And they kept knocking down the church. And Pope John Paul II at this time was a cardinal, which is a step below the Pope. And they kept rebuilding the church, and they kept rebuilding the church, and they kept rebuilding the church.
Physically rebuilding.
Physically rebuilding the church. And Pope John Paul would go out into this massive field, rain or snow, and he would say Mass. And all the Catholics in the area, the number was like 100,000, I think, at one time, would come out to this field in the rain, in the snow, in the heat to hear him say Mass. So when the Communist Party saw that, and they saw the dedication that the Catholics had, that the Polish Catholics had, they gave up, because they knew that it was going to be a battle, and they knew they couldn't win that battle, and they gave up, and that was essentially the end of communism in Poland. And he's credited with the downfall of communism in Poland.
Let's see. Okay, we're going to take this little break, and when we come back, I want you to turn the table, so to speak, not this table,
No.
but just turn tables, and I want you to ask me questions about things that we're facing today. I kind of put the spotlight on the Catholic Church and some of the men and the people, but when we come back, we want to talk about Islam. Does it equal terrorism? Are Muslims all terrorists? And what is the take, etc.? We're going to do that. So guys, don't go away. Stay right where you are. We'll be right after this and get guided with
Guidus TV. I love the way you say that.
Thank you.
Guidus TV.
Welcome Sheikh Yusuf Asnas and the newly converted Muslims.
MashaAllah. Newly converted Muslims. MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Oh, I love this. And you can watch it anytime if you just get the apps, the free apps for iPhones, iPads, also the smartphones. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. The smartphones and the Android phones, you'll be able to do it real easy, and it is free, and you can watch it anytime.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. We're about ready to give some more shahadas, and you can join us. You can also help donate. Donate online at guideus.tv. Yeah, guideus.tv/donate. Allahu Akbar. And you can be helping these people get to Islam too. Allahu Akbar. Allah gives the hidayah. He guides the people with Guide Us TV.
Get guided. Guidus TV.
We're back. You're watching Guidus TV. And we have a very special thing that we're doing tonight, and that is to examine from different perspectives what the average person, the media, etc., how they take things and get a spin off of it. To help us do that, we have former theologian from the Catholic Church, Tim Howard, is with us. And again, Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam. It's great to be here, Sheikh.
Yeah, you say that, Assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum salam, just like you've been doing it all your life.
I kind of have. Not even kind of. I really have. It's funny because I grew
You've
up.
had exposure to Islam.
Yeah, a lot of it, yes. Yes.
So, and I asked you the day that you did your Shahada, I asked you, a question. I said, you have family that's Muslim and family that's non-Muslim. I said, which do you like to be with the most? You said Muslims. I said,
do.
okay, say it.
They make better food.
They do. We want to be serious now
Yeah.
because in the first part of our program, I kind of put you on the spot, put Catholicism really on the spot. We talked about some of the things that I think are near and dear to a lot of people. They want to know what's going on. I wanted to particularly do this and to say that nowhere that I saw, please excuse me if
No,
I'm wrong,
it's fine.
but nowhere did I see anywhere in the world that the media took a spin and said that all Catholics are dealing in homosexuality,
No.
or all Catholics are dealing in some form, or they didn't even say that all the priests deal in this. They didn't say even the Pope or so and so, even the cartoonists who can be very, very rank
Yeah.
in things that they put cartoons out there. I didn't see any of that.
Well, you know why you didn't see any of that. The Catholic Church, when you think of the Catholic Church, and you think about the church's Christianity, but the Catholic Church in particular, because it's a very devout sect of Christianity, when you think about its stance on homosexuality, the answer is no, it's wrong. And that thought prevails even through the pedophilia that was associated with the church in the 50s and 60s. Because
So they did, but I'm going to make a distinction. I don't think they really associate it with the church. I think they associate it with individuals who were working in the church.
yes.
Whereas the problem that we're going to be talking about now
Oh, yeah.
is how the media takes a very big liberty to take some people who are not even in the Islamic clergy whatsoever. These are not people that are reputable. These are not people who are known to be world leaders or famous for being great reciters. Or
Right.
These are people who are, in many cases, former bad guys who suddenly get the light of their looks really like a guilt syndrome that's flipping the other way. Like all of a sudden, I'm going to make this big repentance thing. I'm going to be the opposite of what
Born
I was.
again.
Extreme. As much as they were extreme one way, they're going extreme the other. And nobody's dealing with this.
Right.
We're not hearing this at all. And this is a reality.
This is true.
What we're hearing is an association, a blanket statement, all Islam, all the Quran, all of the, and we've got, what is it, 1,400 years plus, over 1,400 years, of very dedicated, very religious people bringing about, not just emphasizing or not just adding to, but rather innovating some of the very sciences that we have today, that
Right.
we use in medicine, that we use in biology, that we ever, in fact, in the curriculum of the universities themselves, and some of the standards in the universities have been sent by Muslims over 1,000 years ago. You and I, when we were coming over here today,
Yep.
we mentioned something, we were talking about something. You said that the Catholic Church had their first observatory in the 13th century. Is that true?
Yeah,
Or 1300s?
Yes, yeah,
So it's 14th century.
yes,
This is 200 to 300 years after
yeah.
the Muslims had theirs in Spain. And this is known history, well established. And what we're saying is that we see a lot of borrowing going on, borrowing and then reborrowing of some of these very important advancements throughout history that are coming from these Muslim scientists, these clergymen that were really, and we say that really Islam doesn't have clergy, but yet we do have people who are dedicated
Right.
to promoting our religion and taking it to another level. So I think it's only fair for us to say that the spin that we're hearing
Yep.
is coming, I think, quite unfairly all the way
yeah.
around, compared to what we have a very real and realistic situation that was taking place. If anybody wanted to blame a religion, they
Right.
could have, and they didn't, and that's rightly so. They shouldn't have blamed
Right.
all Catholics or all Christians and so on. So how is it that we're seeing this connection? Actually, I want to call it a misconnection of saying that there's a way to take what a group of people, a
Yep.
very tiny group compared to the total. If we want to do percentages, for instance, you take 2 billion people,
Yep.
and then take 2,000 or 3,000 people out of that, that's not even a decimal point here.
Right.
We're talking about .00 whatever, and suddenly take these people who are doing some very horrific things to a lot of people. Nobody can argue this. In fact, Islam, as you said, Catholicism says no to homosexuality. Islam is very clear in the Quran about the behavior, the carryings on, and even in war, even telling us in war, you cannot do this, you mustn't do that. I think you had a Quran in your truck today.
Oh, yeah, a copy.
And
yeah.
I was looking at that, and we were talking about those verses in Surah Baqarah. And it'd be very clear that you cannot engage in war like this. You cannot kill an innocent person like you killed all the people. And subhanAllah, I mean, seriously, how can people make this kind of take?
Well, I think that it's a complicated question because there's no intelligent answer, and I'm just going to say that like there is. There's no intelligent answer that I, as an educated person or anyone else, educated or not, can really come up with. It's emotion, and you can't really intelligibly work with emotion and by itself. And what I mean by that is, so when you talk to someone, when you engage someone in a conversation, right, about Islam, the first thing that I find is, well, I read the Quran. Well, the first thing wrong with that statement is, do you speak Arabic? No. Well, then you didn't read the Quran. You read a translation of the Quran that was translated by somebody who did his best to translate the original Arabic text into English, French, German, whatever language they're reading it in. So you're already at a disadvantage because you're taking it from one language to another, and some of the translations, some of the words, some of the meanings get lost. So that's the first thing. So when you talk to those people, no, they didn't really actually read Quran. They may have read a translation of Quran. The second thing that I find that comes about is that they didn't actually read a translation of Quran. They went to a website. And this website is, I won't name any websites, but this website says, well, this is what this means. Well, the guy that wrote that is either an Islamophobe or he's a raging atheist, as I like to call them, somebody that doesn't like religion or has it out. So everything that they say has a negative spin. And when that's the first source you look at, when that's the only source you look at, that's the only view you have. Another thing that I find, and I found this in the seminary, and I'll pose this question to you, is there's such an extreme view that there's no ability to reach across the aisle. And it doesn't mean you have to agree with the other person, but to open your mind and to listen to what they're saying. When I was in the seminary, one of the questions that would always be posed to me is, do the Muslims love Jesus? The answer is yes, they do. Yes, we do. And then they would say, well, they don't believe Jesus is the Son of God, though. No, they don't. Well, it says right here in the Bible. Well, no, that's not what they believe, and here's why. Well, that's not right because my Bible says that Jesus is the Son of God, therefore he's the Son of God. And then they quote the famous line of nobody can come to the Father except through me, and they like cling to that, like that's like their rock. And they won't waver from that. So if you try to explain that, yes, Muslims love Jesus, here's why, here's how, they're not even open to understanding. So like I said, I think the other problem is that there's this lack of ability to, not necessarily, I don't have to agree, but I should be open to talk and sit and discuss with you, regardless of whether or not I agree with what you believe. Intrafaith dialogue, and it seems like there's very little of that is meaningful.
Would you agree with the statement that there are a lot of people talking about interfaith dialogue when in reality they're not really open to it themselves?
Yes, I would. Because, and I'm going to pull an example here and just, keep your minds open, right? But sitting here as Muslims, we believe that Islam is the right way, right? Yes. True. I'm going to go back to being a Catholic for a second here. I mean, I can't because I don't want to, but I'm going to put my hat on. As a Catholic, Catholicism is right, and it's the only thing that's right, and everything else is wrong. And now I'm going to put, I'm going to become a Jew for a minute. Well, Judaism is the only thing that's right, and everything else is wrong. So now you've got three very strong, opinionated people. None of them are willing to sit down and meaningfully talk to each other and go, yeah, okay, we disagree on some things, but look at what we do agree on. Let's build off of those things. I think that. Go ahead.
Let me back up even further than that with the same statement, though, that you're making. Does the Jewish text itself call for open dialogue, call for open-mindedness, or is it promoting a sort of a one-minded, I think, a model for a human being? Just you go with this or you got nothing.
Well, here's what I will say to you. I'm going to broaden that question.
Okay.
I have yet to read any religious text anywhere that calls for a very narrow-minded, closed-minded, blinders-on approach. I've never read religious text anywhere that says that, whether it's Catholicism, Christianity, Islam, Judaism. I'll even take it as far as to say paganism, right? And again, not that we agree with those religions, but I've never read anything that says closed-minded. Everyone says, listen, talk. These are your brothers, and I've never read anything that says other than that.
Okay, there are statements within the Old Testament, the New Testament, the Last Testament, that could be interpreted by someone as to say that, well, there isn't any other way. No man cometh unto the Father but by me.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the one you quoted yourself. That's the New Testament, and that's very clear in the red letter edition. This is in red letters. They say Jesus said this. We know he didn't speak English, so that's already a fallacy. But
Right.
to hold on to the thought, you could interpret that to say that, okay, then my religion is the only religion. You could also go back to the Jewish text and take a close look there and see that clearly, if anybody didn't follow the Ten Commandments and didn't hang on to this, that there was no way they, the pagans, the what does it call them? It calls them the idolaters, and these are clearly the fodder for the hellfire.
Yep.
All right. We jump forward now, go to the Last Testament. We find in the Quran in chapter 3 two statements that I could go with either one of them. One's a lot shorter, so it's easier. The first one, chapter 3, is Surah Al-Imran, verse 19, in ad-dina indallahi al-Islam. For sure, the way of religion with God is only Islam. Okay. There's another one, verse 85, same chapter. وَمَنْ يَبْتَغِي غَيْرَ الْإِسْلَامَ دِينًا فَلَا يُقْبَلَ مِنْهُمْ وَهُوَ فِي الْآخِرَةِ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. That whoever desires a religion, this is a translation, it actually means a way of life, but a religion other than Islam, it will never be accepted, and then these people in the hereafter will be in the hellfire. But this again is translation. This is somebody interpreting words, and this changes it. Now, if I could use this point to show you something. If I go back and really analyze the meaning of the words, I can find something different, because it says that whoever wants a way of life other than what God has prescribed for them, then he's not obliged to take that, and they're going to be the losers on the day of judgment. Going back to the other verse, in ad-dina indallahi al-Islam, for sure, the way that God is prescribing for you is only to do surrender and submission to him and be sincere and in peace, because translating the word Islam. If you go back and look now in the Quran itself, you'll find that it tells us to tell people to be on the religion of Abraham. Well, now you just went back to the Old Testament.
Well, I think, though, we're speaking on two different points, and what you're saying is true. What I was getting at more so was saying that, is it your... and I use this a lot with the Catholics, right? Do you have the power to judge? And the answer, at least in the Catholic perspective, is no. Do you want that power? No, right? So, yes, we believe, and that's what I started originally with, which is, as Muslims, we believe that Islam is the way. And we believe it because it's that's what's told to us. And as Catholics, they believe that Catholicism is the way. And as Jews, they believe that Judaism is the way. But I think maybe maybe a better way to word it is that, is it your position to judge that? And you in your head can go, well, yeah. But as we're sitting here having a conversation, if I'm playing Catholic and you're playing, well, do you want to play Catholic? I don't think so. As I'm playing Catholic and you're playing the
I was
Muslim.
a Protestant.
Yeah,
There's
okay,
no way.
exactly, right. It's not my job to sit here and attack everything that you believe, sitting here between us, and I think that's the problem. What you believe internally, if it's derogatory, if it's angry, keep it inside. If you want to go spout it off go do it in a...
This is our original subject of interfaith. How are you going to have an interfaith dialogue when really the idea behind the real motivation isn't to have a dialogue, it's to get converts.
Yeah.
Or it's to put other people down, or it's to play one-upmanship.
And you can't do that.
It won't work.
No, it doesn't.
But to go back to your question,
Go ahead.
is there text in Islam about this? It says clearly in Surah Atin, Watini wa Zaytun wa Turi Sinin, the very last of it says, Alayhi salahu bi'akamil hakimin. Isn't Allah the best of judges? So it's not for us to judge. You are absolutely right. But look how people will try to interpret, and now this brings us now to our subject for tonight. How people interpret texts, how they interpret meanings, how they interpret signs that they see, and how they interpret what's going on around them. And then when you get into the mindset of the person, you see it starts with a twist. It starts being bent. And then when they see things, they see what they want to see.
Yes. Perception is reality.
Let me pose a question to you.
Okay.
Suppose,
Okay.
and I'm not saying this is a fact, but suppose we look at what you were talking about with the Catholic Church. No matter what happened, nobody had the courage to come out and write an article and say, all Catholics are X or Y or Z.
Right.
That never happened.
No.
That I know of.
No. Well,
and if it happened, somebody said it in a bar somewhere. I mean, I'm sure somebody like that, but it wasn't anything that was going out here and being a blanket statement, being promoted on all television and all channels and so on and so on. So to the extent that Catholics had to be screened before they could go in or out of buildings,
There you
or
go.
they had to be selected before they could. You can't migrate to our country if you're a Catholic because we don't know what you're going to do with our kids. Nobody came up with this.
No, that never
all right?
happened. No.
So and that is attributed to clergymen.
Yeah.
Clearly,
Yep.
and even today. Okay, so, and again, I'm not picking on the Catholics. I know a lot of good Catholic people out
No,
there.
there are some
I'm
great
just
Catholics.
saying the way that this is being handled. But what you said was that you implied that there was a unity amongst Catholics, even when you spoke about the Polish Catholics, even during the time of the Nazis, how they stuck together. Even I mean, those people had guns, and the Catholics had nothing.
There is.
But 100,000 coming together.
There's a very strong unity in the church, and that's.
So this is where my question comes now.
Okay.
We have a lot more than 100,000 people.
Yeah.
We've got 2 billion.
Yeah.
If, and this is a reality check, if these 2 billion people were all together on any kind of an agenda at all, the rest of the world could never hold up to it.
This is true.
So why, when they have such a huge, and I don't think there's any other, because there's a big split in Christianity between Catholics and Protestants.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah.
They're not together.
No, they're not.
So you have a huge gathering of 100% of all the Muslims agree the Quran is exactly the word of God in the Arabic language.
Yes.
They all agree that we should be memorizing the Arabic language. Whether they do it or not, they all agree to that.
Yep.
They also all agree to the fact that we're supposed to pray 5 times a day.
Yes.
They agree to the fact that women are to walk around dressed like Mary and dressed like the nuns, and when they go out in public, cover up their beauty, etc. And this is known.
Yep.
We don't have a schism out here that's saying, we have a different Quran, we have a different, set of moral values, we have a different prophet, or
Right.
because if that's the case, we'll say, okay, you're not Muslim. So when we have this kind of unity in our thinking, what is the problem that other people could come up and say these blanket lies. I mean, this is so far-fetched that it's unrealistic. And then even some of the Muslims are saying, well, you know, maybe we should look at this, maybe, and you're like, are you serious?
Yep. Well, I think I'm going to start the answer to this question by saying that in religion, well, let's start with politics, right? So you've got liberals and conservatives, and on issues they take a left or a right side of the issue. Well, religion doesn't really have that. And what I mean by that is we all believe the same thing. And in the Catholic Church, for instance, there's a saying in the Catholic Church that there's no such thing as a liberal Catholic, right? There's also no such thing as a conservative Catholic. There's just a Catholic. And so everything that the Church believes, every Catholic will say they believe. At least in unison say they believe. Now, when they go home and, you know, they're in their rooms, they may not agree with, you know, Section 3A, but they will stand together and say the same thing. It's like when they, the profession of faith during Mass. Now, I'm going to slide that a little bit. And I was watching Bill O'Reilly, the O'Reilly Factor the other day. I was sick and I decided to make my life miserable. And one of the things that O'Reilly said was there needs to be a 1 million man march on Washington with the Muslims. So the Million Muslim March.
Well, they had that.
Yes, yeah, but apparently
1994, I think.
Apparently not to O'Reilly's standard. He wants 2 million or something. I don't know what he wants. But anyhow, he wants all the Muslims in America to go march on Washington and scream at the Capitol building what we believe. Well, the problem is we do that. And no, we don't have a 2 million man march every weekend in the Capitol, but we have guys going on TV. We have conversations like this. We have videos on YouTube of people saying, hey, we don't condone these acts of violence. The problem is, I think partially, the media won't play those. When they bring a Muslim on CNN, it's that, pardon my analogy here, but it's that crazy guy from England that every Muslim that I've ever talked to, I can't think of his name, but
I hope you don't say it.
No, I'm not going to. Okay. But every Muslim agrees. No. We don't. That's not what Islam teaches. But that's the Muslim they bring on to represent all of Islam, and then they get somebody to question him, and they ask these questions because they know what he's going to say in the answer, and that's what gets broadcasted.
Let's do this. We've got a little break coming up right here. When we come back, let's pick up where we left off and see what is the solution, what is the answer, how can we go forward with this thing. Stay right where you are. Don't go away. We're going to be right back with more so we can all get guided with
Guide Us TV.
And it was your turn to say it.
Was it? I'm glad I said it.
My name is Abu Hafsa Abdul Malik Claire, and if you don't know, you should know. You're watching Guide Us TV. But guess what? Guide Us TV is available on your phones now. It's available on your iPhone, on your iPod, on your iPad, on your Android, all over the smartphones. It is available on your App Store or your Play Store. It is FREE free. Go there, download it, install it, play it, enjoy it, and share it. And remember, get guided with Guide Us TV. Now available on your App Store, Guide Us TV. Go to your App Store today, search for Guide Us TV, download, and enjoy.
We're back. We've been talking on the subject of the way religions are viewed in the media and the news, especially with now the focus when it comes to our real subject, Islam, terrorism, Muslim terrorists. What's the connection, or what can be done about this misconception about Muslims in the world, and especially Muslims here in the United States? Helping us tonight to discover and go over this We have Tim Howard once again. Thank you for being with us.
It's great to
A
be here.
former Catholic theologian.
Yes,
And I guess now that you're a Muslim,
I'm a black sheep to the Catholic Church.
worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
So okay, but let's pick up basically where we left off and bring it back to this topic though. What's going on? How?
So, I think I'm gonna pose a question to you that is always asked at the seminary, and I think it's important because you get so many different answers, right? But why is Islam spread by the sword?
Well, that's a good question. The way I would like for all of our audience to view what I'm going to do right now is to realize that we all receive these kind of questions. I call them harsh questions.
I get them a lot.
I have a website to deal with that whole subject. If you go to our website called Search for Islam and just type the word harsh, H-A-R-S-H, it looks kind of like a Google website. It's powered by Google, actually.
Hey.
But it only goes to our websites. You type harsh, and it will give you the scenario I'm about to present.
Good to go.
Anytime somebody comes with a question, the first thing I want to do is to smile and then to say to them, thank you for asking me about my religion. That's a good question. This unarms them, and they are like, wait a minute, hold on a second. I didn't realize I was asking about a question. I thought I was really putting him on the spot.
There you go.
Especially, like, you know, questions like, why do you kiss the ground 5 times a day? Well, we don't, but let's don't.
Yeah.
How come you have to beat your wives? Whoa, we don't do that. How come you put women second class? Wow, that's not right. How come you guys, you worship a black box in the desert? These are statements that they're making in a question that don't work.
Yeah.
But what are we supposed to do? Why do you worship that moon god of yours called Allah? Wow.
Sometimes.
So, but the standard answer, smile and say, thank you for asking me about my religion. That's a good question. Before I go further, though, let me tell you that in Islam, it's forbidden us to lie.
Yes.
If we lie, especially about our religion, we will never get out of the hellfire. So know that what I'm telling you, to the best of my ability, I either have to say I don't know, or at least be able to quote where I got it from.
So I think what you're saying is only speak on what you know, and if you don't know, get them to somebody who does know.
That's exactly what we're supposed to do with our websites. Now we have a network of over 2,800 domain names and a lot of developed websites, along with our broadcast. It's huge, and it's around the world.
That's quite a bit.
The more Muslims who will participate and come together, like you were speaking earlier about the people in Poland all coming together, if we can get them to understand the importance of working together, to work with Guidance TV, to work with Share Islam, to work with these things that we've put in place. Last 20 years that we've developed this thing, it's there. We don't need somebody to go out and reinvent our wheel. We
Right.
don't need somebody else to say, oh, I want to put up a website. I don't need you to put up a website. We have websites. I want to write a book. And do what with your book?
Right.
So you want to put your name on a book is what you want to do. Is that right? Well, we want people to help us distribute it. You were with us today in the warehouse.
I was.
How many pallets over there?
Oh, what was it? It was like 10 or 12 sitting there. No, it probably more actually, because they were double stacked. So it could have
Double
been.
stacked.
It could have been in the 20s.
You said it, not me. There's 25 pallets.
I could believe it.
Yeah, because they're like you said, they're doubled up.
Yep.
So if you count over there and say 10, 12, then behind that another 10 or 12,
Yep.
you got, yeah. And each one of these pallets is loaded with books, loaded with tapes, loaded
Yep.
with audios, loaded. And we put only one pallet in your truck.
We did.
And your truck went, no.
It cried.
And you took some before. You went to Indiana, you went
I
to
did.
Illinois, you distributed them, you went to
Did.
prisons, you went to mosques, you went everywhere and put the stuff out already, right?
Yes, sir.
And while you were doing that, how many times did you encounter Muslims?
You know, it's sad to say this, but the answer is, and I say is zero is saying it's such a minute number that I encountered a lot of Christians. I encountered some atheists.
And they were happy to work with you.
They were, but I encountered very few Muslims. Now, I had a lot of people that said, oh yeah, we'll help you, but they never did. I had a lot of people that said they wanted to, but they never did.
And this is the problem. There isn't a real commitment amongst the Muslims because each one, in their back of their mind, they're thinking how they want to establish their own deal.
Yep.
If I do this, I want it, I.
It's not
And
about
we
me.
have to get past the big I's and the little U's and work towards something that's even bigger. And that's called the big A, which is Allah.
It is.
We work for sake of Allah, and we don't need to have our name on it. We don't need to have our faces out here. I've tried to play that down. I'm the one who tried the hardest not to be out here, but you know, when you go on TV, then you're
It happens.
stuck.
It happens.
But to come back to this, somebody comes with a question like you did, and throw the question up again, which was,
Why is Islam spread by the sword?
okay, so this is a good question. Before we go further, I would like to mention to you that I can't lie,
Yep.
especially about the religion. If I do, I could go to hell. So I have to either tell you I don't know, or at least if I give you something, I got to be able to refer to where it comes from.
Right.
All right. Second thing is, and I should mention this, sometimes questions have a statement in it that's not true. So we need to sometimes look and see what is true and not true about the question itself. And finally, if in the answer you hear something that sounds good to you, that you like better than what you have, are you prepared then at that stage to make the mental decision to go to what's better for you?
Well-
Now, before I go further, that's called a closing question,
Yeah.
and I haven't even presented the answer. I like this because it has helped unwind a lot of people.
There you go.
And then when I come to it, and I start out with this. First of all, before we go further, you use the word sword. Do you believe that any religion could really be spread by a sword?
No, not by the definition of religion.
Okay, so we would agree that people can force their control over people, but
Yes.
you can't really force beliefs on people.
No.
Because you're asking to get inside their heart or their mind. They can fake it.
You can't force sincerity.
And that's one of the words in Islam itself is sincerity. The word Islam contains surrender, submission, obedience, sincerity, and peace. Those are the things that are inside, and I like to explain the word. I take time to explain that.
It's
but
important.
when you hear sincerity is in there, it's like, okay, how did you force me to be sincere? And you have what's called an oxymoron.
Yep.
All right, next thing. If we would like to examine religions based on the word sword, let's look to the text of the books, the Quran, the Torah, the Old Testament, the Injil or the Gospel, the New Testament, and explore and see, is there this word mentioned there?
Right.
Okay, in the Old Testament, which is containing, 39 books?
Yeah. Depending on which.
Well,
Yeah.
Catholics have more.
Yeah. It depends. More.
So
Yeah.
you have the word sword quite a few times. I think it's 70, 80 times. You go to the New Testament, and now the combination throws it over 200 times.
Yep.
The word sword is there. Now, when we look to the Quran, and there are many words in Arabic language, more than 100 words for sword. More than 100 words for sword. So let's take them all. There's Saif, there's Muhammad, there's Khanja, there's all different words that you have. So many, I don't know them all. Not one. Nowhere in the Quran, in Arabic language, is the word sword of any kind. So if we're going to use that word and use that text as an example, then which of the religions were spread by the sword? Do we want to go back and look at the history books and see what happened during the Crusades? Go to the Encyclopedia Britannica and see. Go and look at the Inquisition, which happened just a couple centuries after that in Spain, and see what really happened there. And then come back and tell us which religion you really think is spread by a sword, if a religion could be spread by a sword.
Right.
And then take a look at the missions that came across the United States, especially in Texas, where we have so many of the missions. I think you visited San Antonio. San Jose Mission is there, and the Alamo is
The
there.
Alamo.
And those were places established to keep Indians in as slaves or out as enemies.
Yep.
And it was clear that they put those poor people to the sword if they didn't do what they were told to do. So, and again, nobody blames the Catholic Church for that. And that was clear they did the sword. And it was under the direction and orders of the church. And nobody came back and said it. That's not in the news thing. So how Now see how I'm talking to the
Yep.
person.
Yep.
I'm saying, so how do you think that we wind up today accusing the multitude for something that they're the victim of? Who are the victims in this? Go to Syria. Is Syria a Christian nation?
It's
If
a
you
mess.
believe that, you may need to go and look at again your Encyclopedia Britannica. In fact, if you want to, one of the questions they ask you, what about the way that the Muslims go in and attack Christians? Okay, if you really believe that, then why did Mel Gibson, who produced that movie Passion of the Christ with
Yeah.
his own money, $40 million, why did he have to go to Syria to get the only Christians left on earth that still spoke the Aramaic language, so he could make his authentic movie? Why did they have to go? Because only there did the Muslims have enough control consistently throughout the centuries to protect those people, which were similar to Amish or Mennonite. They don't really have weapons, but it was the Muslims who protected them. And until these recent things with Daesh, ISIS, and all the rest of it came up, that those people were protected by the Muslims there. So if we bring up some of these facts in a real dialogue, as we were speaking about, and open our minds, and we can see that, oops, then I ask this question. You've watched the news all your life.
I have.
Do you believe everything they say?
No, not at all.
And that's the answer I always hear from people.
No.
So then I think we can get on a more level playing ground, and then when they hear things that they like, that changes them. Let me tell you another one. People ask us, what was the age of Aisha when she got married to the Prophet ﷺ? All we really know on that subject is what she has told us herself. Her statements of her age are the only place that you find these ages. Nowhere else. People didn't say things, well, this man married a girl that was, she was this old, that old, this, or this fat or that skinny, because that was just not the way people dealt in those days. They didn't talk about people's wives.
Right.
So everything we know is from her. And if you take it all, show me where she complained. If you take it all, and she talked about very personal things, did she ever say a bad word against her husband? No. And after he died, peace and blessing be upon him, she continued to live up into her late 60s and never even thought about looking at another man. She was in love with her husband the day she died as much as she was the day that he married her.
Right.
So regardless of what her age was or wasn't, and there's a big debate about her being almost, I think it's about 8 years difference in the opinions of scholars. So regardless of what her age was, she said herself that they didn't have the intercourse until she was old enough.
Yeah.
She said that. And she said that they used to run and play together and everything. And she is the one who was telling us the very most intimate things to help women know how to be with their husband and man with his wife. And from her, we're learning that she was one of the greatest of the scholars of Islam. So when you add it all up, the next thing you realize is, you know what? We need to go do a lot more homework. So let's sum it up with this. Open dialogues are very important. Knowing what you're talking about, knowing when to stop talking, and go to the resources. We've run out of time for our program, but Tim Howard is with us. We want to emphasize again how much we appreciate you being with us.
Great to be here.
Perhaps we can get you another time, and we'll look forward to that.
Well, thank you.
Until next time, as we always say, get guided
With Guidus
with Guidus
TV.
TV.